Hey, 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 this is Jonathan Breck, the Creeper, and you're listening to the Don't Go Out There podcast.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Don't Go Out There Horror Movie Podcast. Just want to thank all our fans and listeners. Really appreciate y'all support, and I am super excited for our next guest. A man whose career has spanned 4 decades now, most known as the Creeper from the Jeepers Creepers franchise, Mr. Jonathan Breck. Thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm great, Nico. Thank you for having me, man. When you said 4 decades, I was like, really? Shit. I guess that's right. 4 decades. It goes like that, Having too much fun. So,
Time does go by fast, my friend. Jonathan, we always like to ask our guests how they got into the acting business. I was blown away by your story at Spookala and really appreciated your inspirational message you gave to the audience to pursue what, fulfills their day. Because, you said you had grown, like you hated, like your days weren't fulfilled doing what you were doing. Can you share your
yeah.
story with us and how you got to Hollywood?
Yeah, my pleasure. So, I was raised in a pretty conservative family down in Texas, and I I acted in school and like high school and well ever since I was a kid. I like performing and being on stage um, and I acted in high school, and then when I got to college, I acted a little bit. But where I come from, acting was not a serious pursuit. It was not a real profession, right? Quote unquote. And so when I got out of college, my folks were like, "Yeah, you're not doing that," and I listened to them, and I got a regular career, and I was 3 years in, and was just totally unfulfilled, and was like, I can't do this another day. And I'd always loved acting, and I was like, I want to do something I love with my life, and had the opportunity to do it. So I literally I quit my job. I was living on the East Coast at the time. Quit my job, rented a U-Haul, threw all my stuff in a U-Haul, and headed to California. Didn't know anybody. It was like a movie. It just was like I just couldn't. I kind of felt that window closing. I kind of feel like you have an opportunity to do certain things in your life, and you have to jump through that window, or else the window closes, and all you're left with is regrets. And so that's kind of how I felt, and at that time in my life. And so with equal parts courage and stupidity, I got I got in the truck and I headed west, and and started acting. And it's been the best experience of my life. I tell people all the time, if I never would have gotten a job, I still wouldn't have regretted it. Wouldn't have regretted a minute of it. So, so yeah. So the moral of the story is, you just gotta. I mean, everybody hears that all the time. It's like you got to do what you love, and everybody's like, well, what the hell does that mean?
Yeah.
And I think it's just, realizing that you got one shot, and you don't have to have all the answers. You don't have to know what's around every corner. Matter of fact, you never will. You just have to have enough courage to take that first step. And so that's kind of what I did. I went in and quit my job, and then there was no looking back, and rented a truck and threw all my shit in there. And next thing I know, there was no retreat. I made myself move forward. So I
Oh,
I
that's awesome.
I uh, I recommend it. You know, um, I recommend if there's something that you got to do with your life. I used to hear old actors say, I'd listen to interviews like everybody else, you know, famous actors, and they would always say, "Oh, it's such a hard profession." It's like, trust me, if you can possibly do anything else for your life, if you can do it, I recommend you do it. And I was like, well, what the hell do they mean? Of course I could do something else. I mean, everybody can do
Right.
something else. What they really meant is, now I know, if you can let yourself do something else, do it. If there's something in your life that you feel like you have to have, like air, then you better figure out a way to just do it. So anyway,
Absolutely. You only live
that's
once,
my
like
two
the
cents.
cliche
Yeah,
is.
man.
So just to kind of jump into some of your earlier work, look, I grew up on it. I'm a big Star Trek nerd. I will confess to that. I've got to ask you about your stint as member of the board collective on Star Trek
Yeah,
Voyager.
yeah.
And can you talk a little bit about that process and the makeup for that for being a Borg is just looks brutal in itself.
Yeah, that was my first entree into prosthetics. I'd never worn prosthetics before, and I got that job, and that was one of the first jobs I'd ever gotten. And everybody was like, "Oh man, you're working with Seven of Nine. You're working with Seven of Nine." And I wasn't a Star Trek fan at the time. I wasn't a Voyager fan at the time. And I was like, "What are they talking about? Who the hell's Seven of Nine?" And then I got on the set, and I was like, "Whoa, Seven of Nine! how about
I
how about
bet you did.
10 of 9? You know what I mean?" She
Right
was
there, you go.
Jerry
10 of
Ryan's
10.
amazing.
Hmm.
And then I remember my first day on set. My call time was 4 a.m. and I was supposed to be in the makeup chair at 4, and I was supposed to be stepping on the set at 8 a.m. And they were such a well-oiled machine. I mean, I was sitting in a chair at 4. They had a crew of people working on me, and I stepped on the set at 8, right on the dot.
Wow.
And it was like
Wow.
they had it down. But it was a whole crew of people. It was like you're going through an assembly line in that makeup trailer at Voyager. One person did one thing, somebody else did something else, and you literally worked your way down the line. Then you walked out, and you're a new Borg. You know, so it was fun.
That's
It
awesome.
was a great job. I think that was probably the first. Well, I know it was the first opportunity I had to kind of work through makeup. Communicate through prosthetics, which is a something unto itself, right? So.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, if you don't mind, I'm going to transition into Jeepers Creepers. Before we jump
Mhm.
right into film or character questions, I noticed that some guy named Francis Ford Coppola was executive producer of that film. Like he's directed some pretty famous films. Can you talk about? I actually literally just got done watching The Outsiders before we recorded this, so that's kind of cool. But
That's
um,
cool.
can you talk about meeting him and working with such a legend?
Well, first of all, the very first call I ever got to audition, they really didn't. They didn't say anything, and I'm sure we'll get to it at some point in the conversation tonight. But they said one of the first things my agent said was Francis Ford Coppola's, and I was like, okay, what time? Like, where I got to be, right? And I couldn't believe that they wanted to see me for a Francis Ford Coppola produced movie at the time. But man, it was such a thrill. He came to the set a couple times, and I've never really gotten starstruck that much, but I remember not really being able to pull two words together. Couldn't string two words together in front of the guy. I was just so kind of in awe of the guy. We had lunch together one day, and I can't remember anything I said. I'm sure it wasn't very intelligent, but he was very, very nice. He said, some really big actors started in makeup, and that's really true. Um, and he was involved in the script, in developing the script with Victor, and he was involved in cutting my one line that the Creeper had. I don't know if you knew that. At one point in time, I had a line actually in the first movie, and Victor said one day, he said, "Okay, Francis said we got to cut your line." It's like, "Oh, come on,
Oh
man!"
man.
He said, "It's Francis Ford Coppola. Come, what are you gonna do?" And I was like, "Okay, all right, you're right." So Francis is
True.
right. So he
Right.
cut my line, but no, it's just, I mean, it's an honor working with him. He came to the set one day with his brother Augie when Augie was still alive, and that's Nick Cage's dad. And it was cool getting to meet those guys, talk to them.
That's
So
awesome.
Awesome.
Man. And like you just mentioned, we're going to talk about it. Can you talk about your audition process for the Creeper? The video is on YouTube if anyone listening wants to check it out. And I say this with the most respect I can. You were absolutely horrifying in it. I did watch it, and you were quite scary.
that was one of those auditions where I couldn't really even tell you what happened. I mean, I'm glad they recorded it because now I can look back and see what I did, because I was just, I had about 2 weeks to come up with that character, and you can imagine it's a hard thing to audition for. My agent called and said, "Hey, we've got this kind of strange audition for you. Um, they want you to come in and audition for this character, and we don't know much about him. We know he's a few thousand years old, and we know he eats people, and that's about it. And that's really all they gave me to go on." And I said, "Okay, send me the script and stuff." And they said, "Well, you don't really have any lines, so we're not going to send you the script." And I was like, "Well, what the hell? What am I supposed to do in the audition?" They said, "Well, they just want you to create the character and just come in the room and be the character."
Wow.
It was the strangest thing ever, man.
Oh.
And but fortunately for me, I had like 2 weeks. And so I was like, okay. So I started thinking on it, meditating on it, and thought about, okay, obviously I don't have any lines. So I'm gonna have to communicate with everything's going to be about behavior. Everything's going to be about looks and the way he walks and the way he stalks his prey. And everything is, at every moment I'm communicating with behavior. And so I started thinking about super predators because I figured this guy was a super predator. And then it led me to other things. And I just went way down a rabbit hole and put a character together that I felt really good about. Um, and I would say I felt like I was about 95% there. I was like confident. It's like, okay, I got this character. I think I got something good to show him. But I didn't have that last 5%. And it was just, I couldn't figure it out. And the night before the audition, by the way, I look like I do now. I actually had a little bit more hair back then. Long blonde hair. I was about the least intimidating looking guy. And I woke up in the middle of the night and I was like, that's it. I got to shave my head. I got to go in completely bald and slick and clean because this character wouldn't have hair. He wouldn't want the cleanup, you know? So I went down the hall, woke my roommate up and said, Doug, you gotta shave my head. And 3 o'clock in the morning, the night before the audition, he shaved my head. And when I first looked at myself in the mirror, that was the 5% just went clink
Nice.
right into place, and I woke up the next morning. I called my agent and said, I'm thinking about shaving my head. And she was like, don't do it. You won't work for 4 months. And I was like, well, fuck, it's already done. I didn't tell her I already did it. I just did it, And, and I remember on the way to the audition, just thinking to myself, I got a call from an old acting mentor of mine. He said, when you walk in that room, just do the first thing that comes to you. Don't think about it. Don't edit it. Don't even hesitate for a millisecond, because you do, you're dead, right? And so, I walked in the room, and it was a traditional. Well, it was crazy because usually for auditions you go in and you have a pre-read, so you'll meet maybe the casting director, or you might even meet a casting assistant, and they'll read with you, and they'll decide whether or not you deserve to go to the casting director, and then they'll send you in front of the producer. So it's like a battery of auditions. You probably heard this, right?
Right.
To get a big film like this. But they'd been looking for this character for a while, and they were really up against it. So, as luck would have it, the room was full of people. I mean, producers, everything. And they had a chair sitting out in the middle of the room, and they had a table across from the chair with, like I said, about 8, 9 people, 10 people behind it. And they walked me in. I just walked in, sat down in the chair. Nobody even looked up. Everybody was still looking down. So it's like a bad Hollywood show, right? Everybody's eating
Right.
or on their phone or what. I mean, nobody even knew I was there. They weren't paying attention. And then I just sat there quietly in the chair, and then the director looked up. He looked at me, down at my picture, looked back up at me, looked down at my picture, looked back up, and said, "You don't have any hair." And I said, "Well, sir, this character wouldn't have any hair, so I shaved it." And everybody in the room just kind of looked up,
Nice.
and the energy just changed. It just went whoom, and I was like,
Got him.
and then it just took off from there for me. Like I said, I don't really recall, didn't really remember what I did. I just went for it, and it worked out. So, of
Well,
course they
kind
tell
of.
you, it's a little other bit of tidbit that I think the listeners will enjoy. So they tell you, who they are. They always tell you, right, that you're never supposed to like threaten a casting director for real. You never encroach their space, never intimidate them really for real, never threaten them, never. Man, I went after that casting director. I threw his ass up against the wall. I broke every unwritten rule that they say you're not supposed to do, and it worked out. As a matter of fact, Courtney Gaines, Courtney Malachi from Children of the Corn, right?
Right.
We laughed because he did the same damn thing. He went into his first audition with a butcher knife. and he chased the casting director around the room with a butcher knife. They thought he was completely insane. So, but back to your original question about follow your instincts. I think it was the most valuable lesson I ever learned as an actor, as a person. Really is, you got to go with your gut, man. Don't second guess yourself. So
Well, I mean, speaking of that headspace that you had to get into, I mean, we had James U. Courtney on pretty recently, and he talked about whenever he would put on that Michael Myers mask, like his
yeah,
mindset and psyche, the entire thing would just change for him. Is that kind of the same thing that you experienced getting into the creeper character?
yeah, totally. I mean, the process of becoming the creeper, depending on what day it was, 4 to 7 hours to get in the makeup. And so I just, you sit there and you watch yourself disappear. It's a layering. It's prosthetics. It's not a mask. It's literally layered on piece by painstaking piece. So
Hmm,
you're literally watching yourself disappear, right, with each application. And
right.
so, that became like a meditation. I just watched myself disappear. And after 7 hours, number one, you're
Whew.
pissed. But number two, you're like, you're bulletproof. You stand by the time you stand up out of the chair, you're like, get the fuck out of my way. Let's go to work, man.
Let's go.
And you're exactly right. He's right. Something about being in that outfit, that costume, it goes so far to make you feel like the guy. And I remember the very first makeup test, I wasn't looking at a mirror, and so I didn't see what was going on. And I stood up, and they were like, "Why don't you go look at yourself?" And I walked into the bathroom, and I walked past a mirror, and I literally scared the shit out of myself because I saw something walk past, and I was like, "Oh," you know?
Nice.
And and I had and some people on the set might tell you I was probably a little bit too pumped up, because I didn't listen to anybody. I kind of did what I wanted to do. Nobody could tell me shit when I was in makeup. So
Nice.
It's awesome. So the final scene revealing Justin Long's horrific death, I think, is what kicked off the running joke that he suffers just these horrible deaths in all of his horror films. He's a legend in this genre, and I think Gina Phillips is underrated as a final girl. Do you have any favorite memories or a particular favorite scene with those two?
well, funny story. So Victor and I had the idea that that I should stay sequestered from Justin and Gina when we shot. As a matter of fact, I was sequestered from everybody on the film. I just thought it would be better if nobody knew who was really behind the
Oh yeah.
mask. I thought it'd be better to just stay a mystery. If they knew who I was, God forbid they liked me, it might temper their performance a little bit. And be honest with you, I didn't want to like them.
Right.
I was there to kind of do a job. So I stayed in solitary confinement basically for three months while we shot that film. So unfortunately, I really never got to develop a relationship with Justin or Gina. I mean, I've developed a little bit of one since, and I'm a fan of both of their works. I mean, Justin's had an amazing career, but I didn't actually get to meet him personally until the rap party for the first time. And so but I'm a big admirer of his work. I think he's fantastic, and he was great in that movie. And Gina was fantastic in that movie too. As a matter of fact, I think we're all kind of disappointed we haven't seen her in more stuff since then, because she's really talented and she was great in that movie. So, but no, I didn't, my scenes were, well, as far as memorable scenes, working with them, that last scene in the police station where I jumped through the two-way mirror, and I'm deciding which one I want to take. I've got Derry, and she's pleading with me. That was a really intense scene, and we shot that for most of a day, and that was a really cool scene to do with both of them. You can imagine, really
Yeah.
intense. So,
Oh yeah. I want to ask you about Jeepers Creepers too now, and in my opinion, has one of the most underrated opening scenes in horror. When we spoke in person, you were a fan as well. Can you talk about that opening scene and how truly horrific it was?
well, I mean, Nico, I remember reading the script for the first time, I'm like, wait a minute. The little 10-year-old blonde boy gets killed in the first 10 minutes. It's a Jeepers Creepers movie, man. I mean, it's like, I mean, I'm proud of that series because that's the kind of stuff that happens in Jeepers Creepers. I mean, it's just like we like to surprise the audience and keep them on their toes. And um, I couldn't, when I was even reading it, I couldn't believe it. Just kind of as a fan, just reading the scene and that the creeper on the cross. It was so scary, man. Just having the creeper up there with all the scarecrows on the cross, and just I thought it's fantastic. I mean, you said it. It's one of the most iconic, I think, opening scenes of a horror movie. Um, so kudos to Victor, the writer director who wrote it and imagined it somehow, because it sets the right tone for that movie, I think. So
Yeah, I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, and just kind of staying with part two, you get this bigger buffet of victims compared, to mostly just stalking after Trish and Derry. Did you have a different approach in this film, portraying the creeper, kind of considering the different setting, and once again, just kind of talking about that mindset? I mean, did it differ any in the second one?
well, it did because the second movie I look at is really it was kind of the creepers movie. In the first film, you don't really even
Sure.
see me come in until about halfway through,
Right.
and then even then, you see me in a lot of shadows and stuff, and with the second movie, I'm in full display almost from the opening frame. And not only that, but um, I'm in a full bodysuit. I'm
Yeah.
flying. It's like the creeper on steroids, that film. So definitely my mindset was I was it was all my movie really at that point. So I feel like the creeper was playing a lot more, like you said, cat and mouse in the first movie.
Right.
But in this movie, it was all about, the clock is ticking. I got a few more minutes and I got to go back underground. I got to get some shit done. So the sense of urgency was just pumped up.
Nice.
So yeah, for sure that the mentality was completely different on that film. Um, and I had a blast shooting that film. That was probably as a fan, I get asked this a lot. As a fan, I still like watching the first movie personally, but as an actor, the second movie is so much fun to do. You know,
Nice.
so
Yeah, some really cool weapons in that second one too. But I got to tell you my Jeepers Creeper story now, Jonathan. When I was a young boy in seventh grade, me and my friends were staying the night at his house for his birthday party. We did the old famous Walmart run, back when they were open all night. And we bought Jeepers Creepers on DVD. The movie horrified us. Some of my favorite scenes and visuals are Trish and Derry seeing you dumping the bodies down the tunnel, eating the tongue from the decapitated head in the road, you flying off with Derry, and of course the opening scene from the second one. What are some of your favorite scenes from those films?
the very first. I don't know why, but the first scenes in every Jeepers Creepers movie, the first scene that the creeper has, I should say, let me say the first scene that I ever shot for each movies, and because it was different for the second movie than it was for the first movie. The first movie, the first scene I shot was the first time you see the creeper, which is when Trish and Jerry are driving past, and I'm dumping bodies down the pipe.
Right.
Um, that scene, I didn't know anybody, they didn't know me. Victor and I knew each other a little because we'd collaborated a little bit in pre-production leading up to the day when we started shooting, but we didn't really know each other that well. And they got me out there on the road, and Victor's explaining the shot to me. He's like, okay, Trish and Derry are going to be in the car, and they're going to be driving past you, and they're going to see you just dumping bodies down this pipe. So they just want you to just, dump bodies down the pipe, and they're just going to drive by. And that's the shot. And so, he's on the process trailer, and anytime they shoot from a point of view of a car, it's a process trailer. They got cameras and everything on there. And so Victor's on there, and he's driving by with the camera, and they're shooting me, dumping bodies down this pipe. And so they shot it a couple times, and I was like, Victor, I want to try something. And Victor was a great collaborative director, is a great collaborative director. And so he's like, sure, man, go for it. Try what you want. And I was like, I just feel like the creeper, he knows what's going on. Matter of fact, he knows who that is in that car. And he knows they're watching him. And so what would he do at this moment? I was like, I want to let them know that I know that they saw me. And so I just was dumping bodies. And when I heard the car go by, I just turned around and I just walked to the edge of the church and I just looked at him. And I heard Victor squealing with laughter, which is what he always did when he got scared. He had that response. He would always laugh, and I was like, "What's going on? Who's laughing?" And after the shot, they called me over to the process trailer, and Victor was laughing. He's like, "Hey, trust me, I laugh when it works." He's like, "That was the scariest opening to see the creeper for the first time," and the reason I point that out is because we collaborated together. He gave me a lot of freedom to do things that I wanted to do as the character. And that's when making films gets really fun. Is it when you're just adding to things? He's got an idea, I've got an idea. We're riffing off each other. We're
Right.
collaborating. And so that scene was a lot of fun because it worked. We just came up with something in the moment and it worked. And for Jeepers Creepers 2, the very first scene I ever shot was Creeper running through the cornfield. Remember when Minxie is dreaming and she sees a creeper running through the cornfield?
Okay.
And and I walked on the set that day, and Victor's like, "Okay, you're going to start on the other end of this cornfield, and you're going to run through this corn, and then we're going to put a mark on the ground right here, and you're going to pop out of the cornfield, and you're going to hit this mark, and you're going to take a throwing star, and you're going to have a throwing star, and then you're going to throw this throwing star past the camera, which was about 30 feet away." And we're going to put a little target up here. So try to, throw the throwing star to this target so that the camera has a good angle of the star coming past the lens. I was like, well, wait a minute.
Nice.
So I was like, wait a minute. First of all, the field is plowed, right? I don't know if you've ever run Nico, you've probably run in a plowed field before, tried to, right? So sound like you might have. Anyway, so the field's like 50 yards long. It's plowed. The corn's about, 7 feet high. It's ridiculous. So 50 yards, I run 50 yards through a plowed field of 6 foot high corn. I just happened to come out on a mark, which is a piece of tape on the ground. It was almost comical, right? And then I throw a throwing star 30 yards in front of the camera, and I try to hit a blanket, a ferny pad with a little X, with a little tape X in it. And I'm like, is there a camera watching me now? I was like, is this like a joke? you know, and so I did it the first time, and I came busting out of that corn, and I threw that throwing star, and it buzzed the top of the camera, and everybody dove, diving each
Nice.
way. And then the second time I did it, it was I came out on the mark. I threw the throwing star and stuck it. I went right past the lens of the camera, and I stuck it in the furniture pad on the
Nice.
X. It was hanging
Nice.
there, and I was like, I just had that, those movies, and that's those first scenes, by the way, that kind of let me know, it relaxed me. It was like, okay, I don't know what's going on here, but we're making something special.
Nice.
It's working, right? And
Right.
so both of those first scenes in those movies are special to me because the first time I walked on the set, and I can't tell you, it was like divine intervention. It just worked out, and I think that, for us, in a lot of ways, those movies have been that way for us. They resonated with people. So
Absolutely have.
Yeah. So, got some fun questions now. I mean, you were phenomenal as the creeper, but given the opportunity, and if you could choose, what other horror villains would you like to portray? And then, what are maybe some non-horror characters you would like to portray?
oh man, I would have loved to taken a crack at a character like Jack Nicholson in The Shining. I love that role, man. I would have loved to have had a crack at something like that. Uh,
Given our earlier
Iconic.
conversation, I thought you were
Daddy, Daddy,
gonna.
right? Floyd, is my credit good here? Your credit's fine, sir. Oh man, I would have loved it. And then, as far as non-horror films, I think anything like Indiana Jones or something like that would have been a blast. Adventure films,
Yeah.
Yeah.
exotic location somewhere,
Oh yeah.
beautiful
Yeah.
girl. You know,
Of course.
right?
Yeah.
Seven of
Absolutely.
Nine.
So something like that would have been fun. Actually, I never really did much TV. I always did movies. I don't know why, but I never did much TV. I guess yeah, it could still happen that way, but it hasn't so far. I've just done movies, and I would have loved to have done more TV in my career and do more TV in my career because it lets you go deeper inside of a character. With movies, it's like you prepare and you go and you get one shot at it, and that's it. And then you wrap the movie and you move on. But I kind of got a taste of that with the Creeper and Jeepers Creepers because I got to come back and do two more movies, and it's interesting to have let
Right.
time settle on you a little bit. You get a little bit of
Right.
perspective, and
Hmm.
you're able to push deeper in a character. And so I was always a little bit envious of my friends that worked regularly in TV because they got to go back every day and do it again the next day. And so you really had the
Right.
benefit of perspective, and it gave you the opportunity to take more chances, I think, because you knew you could come back and have another shot at it the next day and go deeper into your character, kind of flex the character's muscles a little bit more, and it becomes a little bit more second nature the longer you're doing a character. At least that's what I experienced in the times I did it as the Creeper. And so I think TV would be a hell of a lot of fun to do, you know,
Yeah.
creatively. I think it'd be fun. Yeah.
Sure. So you'd like to do more TV, but you have do and you do a lot of conventions. This is a question
Mhm.
we always like to ask our guests. What's your most memorable fan experience from a convention? It can be an awkward experience, funny, even sentimental. What sticks out the most to you about an experience you've had at a convention?
Man, I've done everything. I just helped a guy propose to his girlfriend.
Wow.
I walked up with the ring. That was a blast.
Nice.
You know,
Wow.
Nice.
Nice.
that just happened. And, I just so many crazy experiences with people. Um, I love hearing people's stories, to be honest with you. It sounds a little corny, but everybody comes, I get a lot of people's stories. I don't know why, but they tell me, who they saw maybe they saw the first Jeepers Creepers with their dad who's no longer with them or whatever. And just,
Right.
I get a lot of personal stories. And quite honestly, I love having the opportunity to get out and meet people like that. I feel so honored that fans liked what I did in those movies and that they want to come out and see me at one of these shows when I'm appearing there, and that I'm important enough to them that they feel like doing that and sharing a little bit of their life with me. And so I just hear great stories about people, crazy stories about people, just and yeah, so I've really been impacted by a lot of the people that I've met over the years. But as you can imagine, crazy shit. I mean, I've signed in places that you wouldn't believe, body parts you wouldn't believe, and all kinds of crazy stuff. I mean, anything you've heard about conventions is probably true. What
Oh
goes
yeah.
on there? It's like
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
like Vegas with no without
That's right.
Vegas rules. I mean, there's no rules. So
That's
anyway, I
right.
love it. So.
I just want to ask you one quick follow up to the conventions. Like you said, you meet a lot of people every day. Like, do you have to, like, before you walk into that auditorium or wherever, do you have to, like, get mentally prepared to say hello and shake all these hands and hear all these stories? Like, do you got to go to, like, a mental spot for just for that experience?
Well, I mean, it can be draining, right? I mean,
Right.
you kind of got to steel yourself a little bit. Um, and that's why I don't do a ton of conventions because I want it to be fresh. I try to not go back to the same place for several years. Um, and I try to do just a handful a year because I want it to be, I want to show up well, and I want to be there for the fans, and I don't want it to ever feel like a job, and it doesn't to me. Um, and so those days are long, but I really enjoy talking to people, man. So once I get in and I start talking to a few people and hearing some stories, and the day goes pretty fast. Um, but and there's always something different, you know. I mean, you think that you've heard all the questions before, but you haven't. Somebody always comes up with something you've never heard before. So, but yeah, no, it's really it's. I mean, every now and then, at the end of look, at the end of the day, I need a beer for sure,
No
or
doubt. I
two.
bet. I
You
bet.
know,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
because the days can be long, but most of the time I'll have a blast doing it, so it's not hard. So
I've heard that Kane Hodder is kind of a blast at those after parties. Maybe he'll buy you a beer.
man, Kane and I back in the day, yeah. I
Oh.
mean, you never know what you might. We never know what you might see at those after parties. And Kane still gets after it a little bit, but he's lost a step. He'd probably be pissed if I said that, but he's lost a
Yeah.
step at the after parties at least. And I don't stay. I mean, I don't stay out till 5 in the morning at those after parties, and troll the bars like I used to as much. Now that I've got kids and stuff like that, and gotten a little bit older, but I still like to have fun. I always go to the after parties because I feel like that's part of the experience, and I always like to meet fans there, kind of out of the element of being in the show.
Right.
Everybody's got a
Yeah.
couple drinks under their belt, and everybody's usually dancing. Somebody's going to get on a table somewhere, and I still like that stuff. So yeah,
Hell yeah, brother.
yeah,
before
that's
before
when
we
I'm
let you
there.
go, oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. Before we let you go, I got to ask you about one deleted scene I heard you speak about in Jeepers Creepers 2 involving a coach in the cornfield. I hate
Mm,
that got cut out, but I would love to hear you tell, the story again and for the audience to hear. It sounded awesome.
absolutely, absolutely, man. It's the creepers. We always intended. We got storylines for days. We always intended to keep the creeper a mystery, as you probably figured out, and every movie we want, the intention was to let out a little bit more about who he was and where he was from and his origins. And so we have so many scenes and so many storylines that we never really got the opportunity to do, unfortunately. But that was always the intent. And so we'd have a good scene, and for whatever reason, it wouldn't make it in a movie, and we'd be like, okay, we'll do it in another movie downstream somewhere.
Right.
But one scene that I'll never forget, man, the creeper had such a wicked sense of humor, as you know, and there's this scene, and he's always just trying to scare the shit out of the kids. He has so much fun scaring the kids, and there's a scene that Victor wrote where the coach, the main coach, when he gets snatched and taken away, the kids are on the bus, and you remember, and they're fighting about what to do, and then all of a sudden they hear the coach's voice. I'm like, kids are looking up. Coach is like, kids, kids, help, help. I'm like, coach, coach, and they look out the windows of the bus, and they see way out in the field, just above the grass, coach's face, and he's looking at him, going out in the field, going, kids, help, I'm hurt, help. And then the kids are like, shit, what do we do? I'm not going out there. You going out there? I'm not going out there. So they're fighting about who's going to go help coach. Somebody's got to go help coach. And then the camera pans around, and you see from the coach's face to the back of his head, and you see the creeper's got his hand in the back of the coach's head, and
Oh,
he's moving his
nice.
mouth like a puppet and throwing his voice
Nice.
like the coach, trying to lure the kids out to come help the coach. You know?
Nice.
Can you
Awesome.
imagine that
Oh,
scene?
that's sick. That's awesome.
But it's like, Victor wrote shit like that. I mean, there's a lot of stuff like that we never got the chance to shoot, unfortunately. But he's a talented dude, man. So would have been a great scene. I can see it. You can see it being shot, can't you?
Oh
You can
yeah,
just
Yeah.
I
see
wish it
that.
would have made it.
Yeah, yeah.
For sure. All right, so just kind of wrap things up. Can you talk us a little bit about like what does your future look like? What do you have stuff kind of on the fire ready to go, or what are
Yeah,
you working on nowadays?
yeah. I've been writing a lot, trying to produce my own stuff. I've got a few things that are fairly close, I think. And I got raising kids, chasing kids around,
Oh
so
yeah.
that keeps me fairly busy. So yeah, I'm really trying to produce more of my stuff now because I've done so many roles, and a lot of times as an actor for hire, you don't really get to do the stuff that you really want to do. And so I just decided I'm going to start writing and producing my own stuff, and which is what I'm involved in now, more than anything. So
Absolutely. And you don't have
Awesome.
you're not very active. You don't have a lot of social media going on. How can the
no,
fans touch base with you, see you? Do you have any conventions coming up that you have on the schedule?
yeah. I'm not on social media intentionally. I
Oh
just
yeah.
it just got draining I think I did it early in my career, maybe 20
It's a
years ago or
cesspool.
so.
Absolutely.
And and I every now and then I would write back to somebody who said something, and that would just open Pandora's box. And if you didn't respond back, within an hour, then the nasty grams would start, and I'd be like, I just didn't have the time for it, right? So
I get it. I
so I
get it.
got off social media. So I'm intentionally not present there anywhere. And so yeah, I mean, it's just the creeper shows up when he shows up, man.
There
So
you go.
I am going to be out in Vegas. There's a Days of the Dead. I'm going to be out at in March in Vegas, middle
Okay.
of March. Days of the Dead.
Nice.
So come out and see me there. Other than that, like I said, creeper shows when he shows. So
Absolutely.
so
We
Awesome.
went to it.
Vegas,
I was
Vegas
gonna
in
say
March. That's a good time to be there.
absolutely.
yeah, yeah, yeah. March Madness. Yeah.
I was gonna say we did a Days of the Dead in Atlanta, and they run a very good convention. I'm impressed with what they got going on, so that'll be awesome.
And they're opening them in a lot of different cities. I mean, they really expanded it.
Yeah.
The whole convention, the excitement about conventions and personal appearances and stuff, particularly since COVID, is just blowing up. I
Yeah,
mean, it
for
used to
sure.
be when my very first convention I think I went to was on the East Coast, and back then you had a couple good big conventions on the East Coast. You guys might remember, and that was really it. But now, you could live anywhere in the country and be within a 3 hours drive of a decent convention, which is pretty cool. So.
Absolutely.
Yes, sir, absolutely. We're about to let you go, Jonathan. Really appreciate your time. But just getting to meet you at Spook Hollow, right where they filmed the first one, really special moment for me. And it was really cool getting to see you see that truck too with I think his name is Troy. That was a really
Yeah,
cool
that's right.
picture, seeing you two talk to each other and take the pictures by the truck. It was a really cool experience. Thank you so much for coming on. Is there anything else you'd like to promote or say before we let you go?
No, guys, pleasure being here with you. Happy birthday, dude.
Thank
Another
you.
year older. Yeah,
Happy
yeah.
early birthday to you as well.
Thank you, man. Yeah, 36.
Hey, 33.
No, I'm shitting you, man. I'm 36. 36 plus 23. So, all right, guys. Thanks for tuning
Jonathan,
in.